Joining us now, very happy to say have with us, is Dr. Dana Cheng. She's senior editor of China News for the Epoch Times. Dr. Cheng has been covering this Hong Kong situation, which has gotten pushed off the news because of the impeachment fiasco. Also, President Trump showing very little leadership on this, oddly enough. And many of us think one of the reasons is he's in negotiation with the Chicoms for a big trade deal, might not want to upset the apple cart. Not a lot he can do except jawbone, but there's been no Trump jawboning on this whatsoever. I'm very disappointed in that. I think this is a transformational opportunity for the president to weigh in on these young patriots in Hong Kong that just want freedom in their life. And the president nowhere to be found on it, and very disappointing to me. Of course, it's not covered in the lying fake news media because they want to cover Adam Schiff's impeachment. Joining us now to break all this down, Dr. Dana Cheng. Dr. Cheng, great to have you with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tell me, just spend a couple minutes and give us, Dr. Cheng, an update in Hong Kong on exactly what transpired the last few days and where we are right now.
Last Sunday, there was a local council election, and pro-democracy candidate had a landslide win. Now, the pro-democracy candidate won 87% of the seats, and the pro-communist or pro-Beijing establishment, they had only 13% seats. Where before the election, the pro-Beijing people had about 70% seats. So it's a total crush on those pro-Beijing people, the council.
So they only have 13% of the seats now, where they had 70%. How many total seats are on the Hong Kong City Council or the Hong Kong Province Council?
They're about 445.
All right, so they went from 70% or 280 to 13%, 50, right?
Yeah.
So they got crushed.
Yeah.
They got crushed in the election.
Yeah.
Now, the person in charge, Miss Lam, what's her exact title?
Chief executive.
All right, so she's the executive. She said, don't read into the elections. She said people were voting for safety, not necessarily freedom. What was she talking about?
Well, Beijing is not listening to people, and Hong Kong has been the center of information and disinformation. So Beijing has put out a lot of disinformation saying majority of Hong Kong people disapprove or against the protesters. And they are silent majority. They disagree with protesters. Now, this vote explained to Beijing is just the opposite. Majority of Hong Kong people support protesters. And in fact, there are 21 people won the seats. They have been arrested during the protest. So the protesters actually represent the majority of Hong Kong people. And the election showed that Hong Kong people believe this is the way to solve the problem, through democracy, through election. And Beijing is not listening. Beijing is saying, okay, no matter what happened, and Hong Kong is a part of us, and we're going to rule, and everyone else stay out of it. That's actually a speech to U.S.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Cheng. What's the next step for the Chinese Communist government? Obviously, look, those of us that are old enough, like me, as an adult, lived through the Tiananmen Square debacle, and our president at the time, George H. Bush, sat on his hands, did nothing, said nothing. One of the most disappointing times in U.S. history where we did nothing for freedom. I mean, we're going around spending $10 billion in Afghanistan and tribes, but when there was an uprising in China, we sat around, all those young people got gunned down by tanks, and nobody said it. There was not a peep out of anybody in the George H. Bush administration. Very disappointing. So what happens now?
Beijing is going to control more, and Beijing is not going to back down because communists only believe in guns.
Right.
That's communists. They never change. However, the Communist Party inside China is facing crisis from every direction. It's trade war with U.S., it's Hong Kong, and they have economic slowdown. They don't know what to do, and they are like a plague in Beijing. And there are protests in China too, and because they control all the media, they control all the social media, and even telephone communication too. So to outside, there's no report, but there are protests inside China every day.
And there's no media reporting on that, and the foreign media can't get in, so no one knows. And there's no social media. That's all monitored. So you can't get through the
Right.
firewall, so you really don't know what's going on inside China.
Exactly. But they 15 years ago, Epoch Time published a series, a commentary called 9 Commentaries on Communist Party.
Mm-hmm.
It laid bare the history of Chinese Communist Party and how they kill people. They killed 80 million innocent people. That's more than 2 world wars combined.
Mm-hmm.
So many people got inspired and they register on the website outside China and say, hey, I'm going to withdraw from the Communist Party. And more people are doing so every day. So far there are millions and millions of people have resigned from Communist Party. That's like a Berlin Wall falling apart from the inside. So Communist Party inside China is at the verge of collapsing. I'm not talking about China, talking about Communist Party. When Communist Party fell apart in Soviet Union, nobody expected that. And it's going to happen in China very soon.
All right, so one of the things that you were saying is that the Hong Kong protesters, that the crackdown of the Communist Party, let's call them the Beijing Communists, the crackdown is worse than Tiananmen Square, but more subtle. Can you explain what that means?
Yes. For example, there have been 2,500 people suicide, or they were made to suicide. We don't know how they died. And some people did a research. A lot of them died from the same hour in the morning. Would that suicide happen? And people's, like a girl, recently a girl jumped from a high building and died with clothes off. A girl would not suicide that way. And another girl who had very good swimming skill and drowned in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
They don't suicide that way.
So you think like the person that jumped off the building naked was just tossed off?
Well, yeah, nobody can suicide that way.
Right.
It's just strange. So in a way, they don't use tank to crush them only because of international pressure, and they crack down people. And now a lot of students are shipped to mainland, and we don't know what happened. I just saw a video that they were in train, and they were screaming inside the train, and we don't know what they are experiencing inside the train.
So they were just the students were just herded onto trains and taken to the mainland, and nobody knows why, and it's not reported, so it's subtle. Is that what you're saying? We're with Dr. Dana Cheng. She's senior editor of China News for the Epoch Times. We're talking about the Hong Kong situation. Dr. Cheng, so where does the ultimate goal of the Chinese government is everybody knows they're going to crack down, right? It's a matter of time. But what you're saying is we're not going to see troops and tanks. We're going to see behind the scenes people just disappearing, put on trains, never to be seen again. Is that what we're looking at now? Is that your prediction?
It has been happening in the last few months. And also, Beijing has sent mainland police and mixed them into the Hong Kong police. So why they can be so vicious? They are mainland police.
So they're mainland, they're Chinese mainland police, but they're dressed as Hong Kong police. So you think they're the local police, but they're not.
Exactly. They speak mainland dialect, and that's why they can beat Hong Kong people so hard. And usually Hong Kong police, they feel they're facing neighbors.
What's it going to do to the Hong Kong stock market, Dr. Cheng, which is the third biggest stock market in the world? How is it going to affect the Hong Kong stock market, all this unrest?
Okay, so Hong Kong can keep its status as the third largest financial sector because of its agreement with UK and with US. So Hong Kong is treated as a special district with a lot of trade freedom. And if Beijing do not keep its promise, US has the right to review the status of Hong Kong and see whether it should enjoy that. If that status is lost, then the financial privilege will be lost. International money and investment would leave Hong Kong. But the thing is, Beijing want to control, so they are wrestling with U.S. They want to control. They still want that window to have the access to the international currency. But they want to control because they don't know other way. And that's communists. Communists only believe in guns. Yeah.
Dr. Cheng, the some of the protesters, there was some violence, and some people have speculated that the violent protesters were actually mainland Beijing communists that were just planted inside of the protest movement. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, international media have taken the photo, and with a protester dressed up as a protester, throwing gasoline bombs, but with a gun, with a gun on his back. And in Hong Kong, only police have guns.
Right. Well, that's one of the other untold stories, right? You have these protests going on in Hong Kong, and guns are outlawed. So when they talk about taking guns away from U.S. citizens, I mean, here's one of the things: Hong Kong, you can't have a gun. So basically, you're at the mercy. Whenever they crack down, it's over because you have no way to fight back, right?
Right. So they infiltrate into protester, and they throw bricks and the gasoline bombs and create an image of violence from the protesters. So they have the excuse to crack down.
To retaliate.
Exactly. So they play both sides. And that's the technique they always use inside China.
I mean, it's no different, right? It's what they always do.
Right.
All right, how is this? What do you think the U.S. should do?
I think Hong Kong is like West Berlin 30 years ago. Hong Kong is like Berlin. It's a kind of a West Berlin or East Berlin. It's at the border. It's the frontier of a free world. So U.S. should stand with Hong Kong people.
So would you like to see the president make a statement? When you say stand with the Hong Kong people, give me a hard example of how he would do that. Because, look, this isn't like, I was debating this with somebody the other day. This isn't like Taiwan where we can send ships there. I mean, Hong Kong is connected to it's adjacent to the mainland of China. There's no water between it. They have an army. We don't. I mean, there's no military presence that we can have there. So other than the president jawboning it or bringing attention to it from the bully pulpit, we can't really do anything else, right?
Well, actually, Congress, both House and Senate, have passed the bill. That's a Hong Kong democracy and a human rights bill, and that asks the White House and the State Department to review Hong Kong status each year and to sanction those who are involved in human rights abuses. Mm-hmm. So this bill, if President signs, is very powerful. It basically take away, it has the right to take away the special status of Hong Kong, and it will no longer be an international city. You'll be one of the other cities, and that's the only window to have free access to the international market. Mm-hmm. Mainland will lose a lot, and they had to care about that. And a lot of elite, so-called rich people, they park their money in Hong Kong, and they are scared. So that's something we can do.
Dr. Cheng, how do you think this whole thing is going to affect President Trump's trade negotiations with the Chinese on the tariffs and opening up their markets?
Well, China never wanted to sign the agreement with the U.S. They are just playing the game of negotiation. So that's why
the same game they always play.
Yes, they are not going. So Hong Kong showed they are not going to keep the promise. Mm-hmm. Hong Kong only asked them, keep your promise of 50 years of freedom to Hong Kong. China is not going to keep promise. So this the whole negotiation. Okay, they are playing games because their economic is slowing down. They don't want the tariffs so fast, right? So they play the games. They want to slow the process and wait to see someone else to replace Trump in the White House. That's the whole game.
Right. Wait it out.
A few months ago, Beijing sent a top diplomat, Yang Jiechi, to come to United States with a big shopping list and say, we're going to buy this, and you stay out of Hong Kong issue. Mm-hmm. Pompeo and Trump said no. At that point, they were going to send troops to crack down Hong Kong. The U.S. said no. So you can see international support is very, very critical.
Let's go back to when Margaret Thatcher agreed to this transition. Do you think the Brits had to do that, or was there a way for them to maintain control over it?
They have to turn over, and that agreement actually kept Hong Kong in prosperity. Mm-hmm. But they don't understand that communists, they don't negotiate with anyone. They just the communist system. Okay, by the way, China has a long history. Communist ideology is foreign to Chinese. It's not the Chinese culture. Communism is imported, is from outside. They hold China in hostage. And communism is like a cancer. It's like a system. It failed in every country. So it's going to fail in China. It's like a cancer. It keeps expanding. If it has more area, it's like cancer. It's spreading. And it showed what a cancer can do in a free area. If it has a chance, it will do the same in the U.S.
Love your analysis. We really have to have you back. I'm out of time for this, Dr. Cheng, but this is really a transformational moment in our time, and it's getting so little national media coverage. I just can't believe it. Sometimes I think I'm the only person in the radio that's even covering it, and I do it every couple of days. I got to roll. Thank you for being with us.